Hello, welcome to Hekate's Crossing as we continue with the runes and healing. Okay, so the videos that I've been doing are very small snapshots of what the runes would mean for healing aspects of it. Very, very small snapshots for you to go and explore further by looking maybe at other YouTube channels that dive a little deeper into runes, or go and explore some books. If you want to use runes for healing, is what we're talking about. We're only talking about runes for healing. Let us continue with a little bit of a reading from chapter 2, just to sort of go into this a little bit more. Okay, so just put my glasses on so I can read. Okay, so we're talking about runes and healing. Okay, so we've gone through and looked at what each rune may mean, what you can use the runes for. So we're doing chapter 2, the healing of Vanamonen. Okay, Vainamoinen and Lemminkainen. Lemminkainen. Okay, the runic verses that form the basis of the Kalevala, Kalevala, will probably be the last ones to disappear from our minds, because despite all the care that the clergy took to uproot these prejudices of the people's spirit, the Finn do not like these songs any less, and they keep them, strongly convinced that they have occult virtues and a great power when we tune to them in time. Voyage au Cap Nord par le souhait de la Finlande et la Laponie by Joseph Asubi, Paris in 1804. Okay, the Kalevala is a very rich source of information. Okay, and it's going to be used here as a source of case study for the magical healing of 3 different injuries or illnesses: the physical wounds of Vanamonen, the death of Lemminkainen, miraculously revived by his mother, and the psychological wounds of Lemminkainen. All 3 examples show how important it is to recite pleas or poems during the healing treatment. Time to recapture these pleas, these poems, and associate them to the Gald. Galdr. A Gald is of a few runes catching the deep meaning of a poem, and they're sung or screamed, as we will see in chapter 4. In this chapter, we'll look at the healing process as a whole before doing so. Time to say a few words about the validity of the Kalevala. The Kalevala is a collection of legends and songs gathered from the beginning of the 19th century in Finland and in the region of St. Petersburg by a Finnish doctor, Elias Lönnrot. He reconstructed this oral knowledge into 50 songs arranged as a sort of epic that scholars refer to as a Nordic Odyssey. As this beautiful text is largely unknown to the public, it gives us great pleasure to cite long extracts that I hope will convince you of the Kalevala's extraordinary poetic qualities. Lönnrot collected many folk chants while completing his field work in Finland, but instead of publishing them as they were, he put them together in a coherent epic. Clearly, modern ethnology no longer works this way, and many have criticised Lönnrot for having left a personal touch when gathered the poems. A summary of these criticisms can be found in Finnish folk poetry, which publishes a translation of some of the poems collected by ethnologists, before and especially after Lönnrot. This collection of poems, making up hundreds of thousands of verses, created the base of Finnish literature. From reading the texts given in Finnish folk poetry and the criticisms of Lönnrot, the following conclusions can be made about the difference between texts of the Kalevala and those collected by ethnologists. First of all, and this seems essential, no one has accused Lönnrot of having actually elaborated on the texts that he collected. He kept them essentially in their original form. The texts collected do not themselves form a long epic like the Kalevala, but they make up most of it. The best Finnish bards always try to join these sections to make them form a complete story, exactly as Lönnrot did. He is therefore still within the Finnish bardic tradition, but he pushed the system to its extreme by creating one epic, uniting all the sparse themes that were collected. The mistake made by many has been to believe that this epic, authorized by Lönnrot, was an exact image of Finnish folk culture. The personal conclusion is that Lönnrot's work has achieved great success, which he should be congratulated for, and shame on those who complain about it. What is true, just as Lönnrot said, is that he united in the Kalevala a great number of texts representing an authentic part of Finnish popular culture. If you read the individual poems that were collected directly in the field, you will find that they match up almost perfectly, with the exception of two main differences. When the folk poem contained something coarse or vulgar, Lönnrot eliminated it and replaced it with a more acceptable version for his mid-19th century readers, and he should be reproached for these untimely modifications. The case quoted most often by those wanting to belittle him is the ant pissing on the leg of a crane. Eliminating this description, as Lönnrot did, is certainly regrettable, but it is also important to know that this happened very rarely. The folk poems are also bristling with many Christian allusions, and Lönnrot systematically eliminated them, and for this he should be thanked, even if in fact it distorts the exact image of Finnish folk culture of the mid-19th century. From the viewpoint of understanding the magical attitudes of the Nordic peoples, a viewpoint that particularly concerns us here, we should criticize Lönnrot's text. He is not a folklorist, and some poems are obviously tinged by Christianity and designed for discrediting heathens' beliefs. This despite the selective practices of Lönnrot relative to Christianity. Despite these faults, the Kalevala is certainly the greatest text left to us, describing the shamanic customs of the people of the northern countries, even though sometimes a bit too modern. The principal god, for example, was always the sky god, whether called Ukko or Jumala. Jumala means god in modern Finnish. Ukko is rather a familiar name given to God. In modern Finnish, a wife may speak of her Ukko, meaning her husband, as they would say in English, the old chap or the old man. This obviously evokes at once Odin, who is so often called the Old One in the Edda. All this tells us is that the mother goddess was already forgotten, unfortunately. The Kalevala constitutes the only text of this kind written with so much detail about magical healing. The 9th song of the Kalevala, dedicated to the healing of Vanismonen, summarizes the medicine that was practiced at this time, joining magic and good sense. The 15th song, dedicated to the resurrection of Lemminkainen, describes the greatest medical deed possible, how to give life back to a corpse. This last song, though hardly credible, contains characteristics that are common to the previous one, and this enables us to make some interesting generalizations. The 14th song, dedicated to Lemminkainen's quest for a ghost elk, also describes a healing, in the opinion of the author, of a psychic illness, using good sense and admitting in a way the existence of the patient's delusions, something I think we would like to see more often these days. The many citations of the Kalevala are my other version from the author, taken from several other versions, Bosley's translation being a kind of English standard, and for the reader's convenience, the reference of the page of the translations are contained the same information as mine. Nevertheless, I never cited Bosley's text. Bosley's text was never cited in the book. Okay. So, treating physical illness. Just for an example, let's just begin this. Okay, we've been on for nearly 10 minutes. Okay. Treating physical illness. The principal hero in the epic is the old or eternal Vanismonen, as he is called in the text. Vanismonen is searching for a companion. He meets a marvellous young woman who is half woman, half rainbow, and she agrees to follow him in his sled with the condition that he builds a boat. Vanismonen does this, and for 2 days the work goes well. But on the 3rd day, Hesi turns the handle. Lempo diverted the blade. A bad spirit shook the handle. The axe hit a rock, and the edge of the blade hit the cliff, and the axe bounced off the rock, and the blade slid into flesh, and the knee of Valorius, and the toe of Vanamonen. Thus 3 demons come together to wound Vanamonen. He reacts immediately. He turns to his magical powers to heal himself. He started then to sing charms, started to chant. He said all the origins and the spells in the right order, but he couldn't remember some of the fantastic words of steel that could serve as a barrier, that would serve to firmly end these slashes from the iron, these gashes from the blue steel. From this we see the importance given to the origin that describes the sacred beginning of the world around us. The poem will come back to this point further on. Vanamonen is missing some knowledge about the spell that would close a wound as great as his. He therefore searches throughout the countryside for help, but without much success, asking, "In this house is there someone who can treat the deed of iron, who can stop this flood, who can hold this terrible blood?" Finally he meets someone who is able to save him. An old man lived on the stove, a grey-beard under the ridge. The old man muttered from his stove. The grey-beard exclaimed, "We have closed off worse things before. We have overcome greater things before. With the 3 words of the Creator, the decrees of the profound origins." After noticing the seriousness of the wound, the old man admits that he is missing knowledge of the origin of iron, knowing that would be needed to treat a wound that serious. "I remember other words, but I cannot recall the ones of the origins of iron, where from slag comes." The old man therefore has to know the origins of iron in order to heal the wounds inflicted by this iron. When a viper bites, the type of venom injected is obviously important, and more generally everyone agrees that the cause of illness should be known in order to treat it effectively. Even in the case of an accident, this primitive medicine does not dissociate the treatment from the cause. Let's return now to Vanamonen, who fortunately knows the origins of iron. Yuko, sky god, rubbed his palms together on his knees, and from this were born 3 daughters, all 3 daughters of a kind, to be the mothers of rust-coloured iron, conceivers of the blue steel. The daughters expressed their milk upon the earth, letting their breasts burst. She who expressed black milk, from her was born soft iron. The one that expressed white milk, from her were all things steel. Made all things steel. She who poured out red milk, from her we obtained cast iron. The old man is delighted to have gained this knowledge. The old man grumbled on his stove, the bed sang, and the head shook. "I know now the origins of iron, I know the voice of the steel." Before starting to treat Vanamonen's wound, the old man addresses himself to iron, so as to become familiar or friendly with it. "I pity you, poor iron and unfortunate slag, and steel and victims of sorcery, who told you to do wrong, who forced you to be bad. You have committed a horrible action yourself. Slice the death-coloured opening. Go, know this, fix these bad ways before I tell your mother. Oh, that I don't complain to your parents." The old man knows, therefore, that the badness of iron is not without reason, and linked to bad treatments that the blacksmith made him submit to. This is how he tries to enter into the good graces of iron. Since he knows his origins, he can get him into trouble by complaining to his parents. In fact, he treats iron like a child, who is more unruly than bad, and he is trying to appease him. When the spirit of iron is appeased, then the old man can address the spirit of blood. Thus the communication with iron is but a stage in the healing. Reducing the healing to this stage only, as the magic of the 17th century did, is to forget the greatest part of the treatment. The following long citation is filled up with various incantations to blood. They are a good example of the kind of incantations you can write yourself to address a patient's blood. "Blood, hold your spilling. Gore, hold your rippling. Stop squirting on me and splashing on my breast. Blood, hold yourself well like a wall. Liquids form a barrier. Hold firmly like an iris on a lake, like a reed on the moss, like a boulder at the field's edge, like a rock in the rapids if you need to. Move yourself a bit more, then let it be in the flesh. Slide yourself along in the bones. Inside it is best for you. Under the skin you will be well, better to run in the veins, sliding yourself along the bones than to lose yourself on the ground, dripping in the dust. Your destiny milk is not to ooze out on the grass perfect blood, softness of the heart of man on the grass, on the mound dearest of friends. Your place is in the heart, the lungs are your refuge. Come back home, run to take refuge there. You are neither a river for running, nor a pool to fill, nor a swamp to gurgle, no ship will sink in you. Stop running now, my darling, you the reed of falling. If you can't stop yet, then clot. The waterfall Tira did it once. The river Tione clotted. The sea drained itself, the skies dried. During this long year of clear skies, of fires that none could master. If you don't take all this into account, we will think of other things. Other means will be used, I cry. That hissy gives me a cauldron in which the blood will be boiled, the gore heated without one drop seeping out. Not one red drop will fall, the blood will not be lost on the earth, the gore will not rush out any more. Would I not be the man of sighs to stop this flow? Able fellow, son of Yuko, to control the torrent of the veins, and Heavenly Father Jumala, under the clouds, important to humans, respected by people, close the mouth of the blood, stop that which hastens outwards. O Yuko, Heavenly Creator, Jumala which reigns in the skies, come here when you are needed, take this way when we call you. Hold out your fleshy hand, and press with your chubby thumb. Close this offending gap, close this cursed door. Lay down upon it a soft leaf, a water lily you will apply to it, to block the path of the blood, to stop that which is moving, that it will stop splashing on my bed and pouring on my clothes. Thus he closes the mouth of the blood, he barred the path of the gore. Now that the iron and the blood have quietened down, now that the wounds have stopped producing gore, the old man dedicates himself to what we would today call proper medical action. He prepares a drug. Obviously, this medicine would have some magical properties, as we shall see later. He sent his son into the workshop to prepare a balm. From these bales of hay, from the points of those with 1,000 leaves, who spills honey on the earth, from where flows a brooklet of mead. He meets an oak tree. He asks this oak tree, do you have honey on your branches or mead on your bark? He took a few splinters of oak, some pieces of the brittle tree. He took some good plants, all sorts of herbs, some that we don't get here, growing all over far away. He put a pot on the fire. He made this concoction boil. All together with the bark of the oak, with the good herbs, the pot boiled and grumbled. In all for 3 nights, 3 days of spring. The son responsible for preparing the balm checks to see if what he got is good enough for treating Vanamonan's wounds. The first time he notices that. The balms were not reliable. We could not count on the remedies. He added some plants, numerous herbs that we had brought back from all over, collected from 100 journeys by 9 of the magical eye, that is to say 9 sorcerers. From the heights that treat illness, he cooked them for 3 more nights. For 9 whole nights. He removed the pot from the fire, looking at the balms were reliable, if we could count on these remedies. We note that the account of days is somewhat wrong here, that since the medicine is cooked twice 3 nights, that do not account for a total of 9 nights. It seems that the poet forgot one seemingly useless cooking. Vanamonan's son notices, finally, that the medications were effective. He checked the balms, he looked at the remedies, trying them on the cracks in the rock, on the splits in the boulders, and then the rock stuck to the rock, the boulders joined the boulders. Nobody can miss the magical side of this doing. Notice as well as its rationality, less obvious to grasp. The balm had to be somewhat sticky, thus it should not flow on the rocks. It was put upon. It should not flow in a hole between 2 rocks, thus sticking, actually bridging them together. Now that the apprentice has correctly prepared the potion, the master verifies its properties. The old man tries them with his tongue, tasting them in his mouth, and he knew the drugs were good, the ointments reliable. This phase corresponds to many chemical and biological tests that modern medicine is supposed to undergo. Knowing the amount of protests risen, at least in France, by consumers' associations against the lack of seriousness in the way these tests were driven, I find it remarkable that the step was not forgotten by primitive Nordic medicine. So he coats Vanamonen, he heals the unfortunate, he coats them underneath, on top, splashing on the middle. We should note that the ointment is applied, it seems, on Vanamonen's whole body, and not just on his wound, which hints that his balm is not looked upon as a local medicine, but as a global one, as are the modern internal medicines. A similar attitude is found in an Anglo-Saxon charm that insists on smearing the sick person on the head first, be the sore where it may. These actions, proper medical actions in the modern sense of the term, are potentially effective, yet the healer adds a new plea, to ask the potion to deliver its efficiency. In this plea, the healer insists that she is not the cause of the healing, but the god of the sky, Jumala, is the example. The gods are many heathen approaches, or the spirits in the case of shamanism. He pronounces this speech, he speaks these words, "It is not my body that moves, but the flesh of Jumala. I don't move by my own power, but by the power of Yuko. I don't speak from my own mouth, but from the mouth of the Creator. My mouth may be soft, even softer in his mouth, and if my hand is true, even truer in his hand." Relatively ironically, as do modern medicines, the ointments produce some after effects. When the ointments were applied and the medicines were reliable, they made him almost lose consciousness. Vanamonen fainted, he moved here and he moved there, but never found any rest. The old man reacts against these new after effects by bandaging the wound, doing so with a new plea. I think that we can generalize from this example here. He performs something necessary, even in the absence of after effects. It is the stage of re-education in which the healer gives independence back to the patient, here by a bandage. More generally, we are describing here all the treatments that help patients to regain their balance once they are rid of the most serious symptoms. So the old man drove out the pain, throwing out the painful points, as far as the middle of Kipumaki Hill, the hill of sickness and pain. To speak of Mount Kipuvuri, the Mount of Pain, to make the rock suffer, to break the boulders, he took a handful of silk, unrolled it into cloth, cut it into strips, made bandages out of it. He tied the silk, wrapped with these beautiful strips, the knee of Valorius, the leg of Vanamonen. Once the treatment is done, the healer make another last plea to the gods. He makes the speech say these words: "Let the Lord's silk be a bandage, the Lord's cape a blanket for this healed knee, for these reliable legs. Look now, O beautiful Jumala, keep him true, Creator, that he will not be taken into pain, that nothing brings back the wound." The healing is thus achieved, the wound closed in such a way that the flesh is now even healthier than before. That is to be expected from a treatment addressing the cause of the sickness, because the cause of the illness was treated, the weakness that existed in the sick, and that which enabled the illness to settle in, is now removed. This explains perfectly well why the state of the patient becomes better than before the illness. Here the old Vanamonen felt a real assistance. Soon there he is healed, and his flesh grows beautifully. In good health underneath, painless centre, slides without pains, and on top no scar, more graceful than before, better than he has ever been. Here comes at last the action of grace of the patient himself, by which he gives thanks to the gods who have healed him. At that the old Vanamonen, he lifts his eyes to the sky, handsomely looking up high to the sky. He speaks these words, he says this speech: "From where all graces flow, the friendly protection comes, from the sky there above, from the all-powerful Creator. Be praised and exalted, O Jumala Creator, for the assistance you have supplied me with, giving me a friendly refuge in the midst of these sharp pains from the sharp work of steel." Now let's summarize the stages of Vanamonen's healing, since we'll use this as a base for the magical treatments described later on in Chapter 5. This healing took place through 11 stages, each including phases of action and phases of prayer. Okay, firstly, we've got the patient tries to use his own strength to heal himself. Number 2, when failing to do so, he looks for someone able to heal him, a healer. Number 3, the healer searches for the origins of the illness. Number 4, she makes a plea to the cause of the illness, a plea based on the knowledge of the origin of the illness. Number 5, she makes a plea to the manifestation of the illness to the symptoms. Number 6, she produces drugs from the variety of herbs. A first batch is not effective. It is with the second try that the final ointment is obtained. Number 7, she applies the drugs after having tasted them. Number 8, she makes a plea to the gods so the drugs become efficient. A plea is always necessary to ensure the success of a materially satisfying drug. Number 9, she ends a treatment with an action enabling the sick to regain control. 10, she makes a final plea to the gods so that the preceding action becomes effective. And 11, finally the patient himself performs an action of grace to the gods to thank them for his healing. Okay, so in chapter 5 we'll see which of these actions take place in ordinary reality and which in non-ordinary reality. And above all else, we'll look at what role the runes can play in the process. Once again, the healing of Vanamonan will be our constant guide in choosing ways to fight illness. Okay, so that's it for now. Don't forget to check the links down below. Check the links on my channel. Like, subscribe. And don't forget to ring the bell. And let's just leave you with a message from the runes. Okay, what rune are we going to reflect on today? In Divination. Okay, so we're looking at what message do we need to listen to today. Okay, we're going to listen to Ingwar's, which talks about potency. Okay. Talks about achievement, difficulties to overcome, creativity, fertility, unity, and equanimity. So it feels like we're talking about a sense of overcoming any difficulties, being able to achieve what we want in this moment. So let's have a look and see what the book actually says. Okay, the Ingwar's rune is one of the most obscure, okay, in the Futhak, but many scholars posit that it is named after the god Ing, an ancient epithet for the fertility god Frey. Okay, this rune seems to be connected to the idea of fertility, but Ingwar's encompasses more explicitly the notion of sex and sexual energy. Certainly, the rune picture can be read as a phallic symbol, representing the head, okay, though some authorities claim that it is just as likely to be a yonic symbol depicting the female. Okay, the potency of Ingwar's is almost always fortuitous, but has a number of interpretations. The connection with fertility may indicate that the conception or birth of a child is imminent, or it may be that a strong sexual attraction is about to be realized. Okay, that's interesting. It can also signify, release from a build-up of tension on any level. Perhaps a work issue is growing to a crescendo, or there is relaxation after a period of time. The urge to create cannot be dammed up one way or another. It will find an outlet. Okay, so deity is Frey, the tree is apple, animal is boar, number 22, orange, the bird is cuckoo, plant is self-heal, and the sound is n. Okay, so we talked about achievement, difficulties, overcoming any difficulties, being creative, being able to complete stuff, fertility, and unity and equanimity. Okay, that's interesting. This could also be a rune of harmony and unity, as well as dynamic growth energy, and it's got no reversed meanings. Okay, so that's an interesting one to think about for today. That's it from me. Take care and blessed be.